atmosphere to cause a blue sky. It's black, but you cannot see stars.
So this gentleman's talking about from space, for example, the International Space Station, you won't be able to see any stars because someone asked him for photographs of proper photographs from NASA, because we know NASA lie. And he's coming out with the fact that apparently you can't see stars. Now, Chris Hadfield, who was in the International Space Station, used to talk about the marvellous stars that they could see. In fact, you can actually see better without atmosphere. The stars are actually brighter. Where do these people come from? I'm guessing he works for NASA or is part of something to do with NASA.
So apparently, did you guys know I was a shill for NASA?
Yes,
this whole time,
it's obvious, right?
30 years of science communication, of producing the Skeptics Guide to the Universe podcast, of being a neurologist at Yale, and secretly I'm a shill for NASA the whole time.
That's an $80,000 microphone.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, because NASA really needs to pay people to lie for them, because they don't have enough people that could do it that already work for the company directly. But that's crazy.
So what's this guy talking about? This is in response to people saying, why don't we see stars in the background, of photos from space? Ian, I sent you a photo from Chris Hadfield to show you, this is one of his photographs to show you what I'm talking about. The point is that if the sun is in the sky, if it's not shadowed, then that is so much brighter than the stars, it would wash out the stars. So you won't be able to see the stars. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you can't see the stars from space. It means you can't see the stars when the sun is out. So Hadfield is talking about when the International Space Station is behind the Earth relative to the sun, when it's in the Earth's shadow.
Yeah.
It's basically
Night.
night. That's ISS night, right? Now, on your way to the moon, there is no situation where you're behind the Earth. You can't be in the Earth's shadow. You're too far away. So that whole time, the sun's in the sky, it's going to wash out the stars. On the surface of the moon, it's the same. If you're on the bright side of the moon, it's the same thing. However, there is a caveat to this, and that is if you put the sun directly behind you so that you're looking away from the Earth, away from the sun, or if you're on the moon, the sun has to be behind you and you're looking away from the surface of the moon, and you let your eyes dark adapt, then you can't see stars. But of course, you're eclipsing the sun with your own body.
Your own night. Your head is your own evening.
Exactly. So that's a picture that Chris Hadfield took of the Earth and the moon from the ISS, no stars, because the light reflecting off the Earth is too bright. It's washing out the stars. That's the point, obviously, that I was making. You cannot see stars whenever there is a very bright object in your field of view. You have to either be in the Earth's shadow or in the moon's shadow, or you have to have your back to anything else. Your back has to be to the Earth and the sun so that you're looking only at black space. And again, you have to let your eyes dark adapt, then you can see stars. But that's why you're not going to see a picture of the Earth, the moon, and the sun and stars all at the same time. You're not going to see that because the sun is so much brighter than the stars, it's going to wash it out. And this, of course, is true for cameras as well. Our eyes are actually better than cameras overall, but you could, set a camera to a very high dynamic range setting. You guys know about dynamic range. It's the difference between the brightest and the dimmest object that the camera can capture. And there are ways of doing that. Basically, like with digital cameras, they will blanket dynamic range. They'll take basically multiple photos at different, emphasizing different lightness. So you can have these really amazing pictures with a very high dynamic range. So, but even then you're not going to get stars. If the sun's in the frame, right, that's the problem. You're not going to see stars if the sun is in the frame because it's too bright. So this whole conspiracy idea that the NASA is putting out these fake photos, right, because NASA lies, whatever that means, and they're too dumb to put a star field in the background. If they're photoshopping pictures of space because we're not really in space,
that looks good. Let her out. Release it.
Then why wouldn't it look like every science fiction movie ever, right?
Yeah.
Right.
When you're in space in science fiction movies, you see the star field, right? Because that's what it's supposed to look like in space. But NASA photos, there is no star field when there's something really bright in the field of view, the sun or the light, the day side of the Earth, the day side of the moon. You don't see the stars because it just gets washed out by the bright object. That's because that's how reality actually works. So what's their point that NASA? They're saying you should see the stars?
That's what it seems like.
And therefore, and NASA's too dumb to know that, and so they're really bad at photoshopping.
They
photos.
think they caught NASA.
They caught NASA for 50 years.
They're really good at some things, and they're really bad at some
Really
other
bad.
things. So yeah, I think you're a shill for the sun, Steve.
Yes.
That's what this all sounds
The
like.
sun
I
pays
worship
good,
the
man.
god Ra.
Yeah.
And this is just a way of shilling for Ra.
Yeah, the whole shill thing to me is so it's so easy. It's like, really, like
It's lazy.
It's lazy.
It's like, I mean, the guy could have literally spent 30 seconds on Google and figured out who I was.
Which is always the case.
My life is such an open book. Like there's no way I'm secretly doing anything. I have no time to do anything secretly.
No, but it
I have
makes you
I
think,
have
like,
2 full-time jobs.
the same people that could Google you and get a dossier on who you actually are could also like look up how photography works.
Yes, right.
Google. Why don't we see
like
stars?
it's not that
They
complicated.
could say, why aren't there stars
Why-
in this field?
Which is it's a good question. That's a legit
That's
awesome
the thing
question.
that kills me, is that there's such an and this is true of like so many of the TikTok videos that we do. People ask an interesting question where there's a fascinating answer. Why was there so many fires in America in the second half of the 19th century? That was one of the videos that we did. It's a great question. If only you would take a semi-reasonable scientific approach to finding the answer, you would learn something about optics and about dynamic
that's
range
not the point,
and
though,
photography.
Steve. That's
They
not
take
what they're
minutes.
looking
Of
for.
course not. They're anomaly hunting, right? Which is what conspiracy theorists do. They look for something that superficially to them seems odd, and they go, that's evidence of a conspiracy. Why is it evidence of a conspiracy? Because it's weird, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. But how do you know that? I mean, have you explored that? No, it just looks at this. They just know because NASA's lying, and therefore this thing that looks weird to me is evidence that they're lying. But it unravels when you think about it beneath this very thin skin, this thin veneer.
And every single one of them has some level of expertise in something that has a similar conundrum within it that they could explain instantly and be like, oh yeah, no, that's not why. They're a car repair person, they're a skier, they're a tennis, like whatever that thing is that they do. And there's something in that thing that they do that is anomalous that they would go like, oh no, that's not that. It's this.
But then the people quickly expose themselves as not truly looking for the truth.
Right.
And the reality behind it. What they're trying to do is just confirm
They have a
their
narrative.
story. Yeah,
They
just
have a
want
narrative.
confirmation.
It's a conspiracy narrative, and that's all. That's it. That's all that matters. Again, it also gets back to something we've been talking about, which is like on social media and in general now in media, like the truth isn't necessarily the point. Although I think this guy actually believes what he's saying because he sounds like a conspiracy theorist. But often people, it's like it doesn't even matter whether they believe what they're saying is true or not. It's the narrative and it's the engagement and the entertainment value, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also an anti-intellectualism about like all the experts are wrong, and I could shoot from the hip and disprove all of them without really making an effort.
That's the hubris of it. Like,
Yeah,
how
it's
many
massive
thousands
hubris.
of people are you saying you're smarter than?
Yeah, millions.
Or millions
Yeah.
of people
Yeah.
that you're saying you're smarter
But
than.
they're in on the secret, guys, and there's a thrill there.
They've seen the band behind the curtain.
There's
Right?
stars behind me. You can see. Look at that. You can totally
Yeah.
see.
But it is interesting to hear people turn photography into a conspiracy. Like that's how strange it all is now. It's not like we're not like discussing like alien visitation and stuff. We're talking about like how photography works.
Right.
Light spectrum.
And if like your cognitive dissonance
Bright things wash out dimmer things.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
and,
Ironically.
and oddly, the person that is complaining about these things has a camera that they're using
Right.
to talk to you.
Right,
on.
they're adjusting the f-stop on their camera.
Like
to
you
be
could do
able-
this yourself. Like you literally could just go outside and start experimenting and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know.
Like we have to have good lighting on the video where I talk about lighting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.